Singapore tried it and failed. Thailand studied it for 10 years and gave up. Even China, with unlimited resources and authoritarian control, couldn't replicate it. So what makes Malaysia's system so impossibly unique that the world's richest nations can't copy it? But wait. Before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment, "I subscribe," below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. ***. Malaysia ranks 12th globally in medical tourism, pulling in $300 million annually. Its food scene is legendary. Petronas Towers, stunning. But that's not the secret. Meet Sarah Chen. She's 34, a Singaporean marketing executive who moved to Kuala Lumpur in 2019. She pays $400 a month for a 3-bedroom condo in Mont Kiara, the kind of place with a pool, gym, and security. The exact same apartment in Singapore? $3,200. But when she told her friends back home why she could never move back to Singapore, they didn't believe her. They laughed. They said she was exaggerating. She wasn't. According to a 2018 World Bank comparative study, 23 countries attempted to replicate Malaysia's economic model between 2000 and 2015. Every single one failed. Not struggled. Failed. Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew himself, the man who built Singapore from swamp to superpower, admitted in his 2011 memoir that Malaysia's approach was politically impossible for Singapore to implement. Think about that. The architect of Singapore's miracle said he couldn't do what Malaysia does. Enter Wei Zhang, a Chinese economist who spent 3 years studying Malaysia's system. He traveled to every state, interviewed hundreds of business owners, analyzed decades of data, and he discovered something that changed his entire career trajectory. The answer wasn't in the policies. It wasn't in the GDP numbers or the trade agreements. It was in something no government can manufacture. Something that took 800 years of accidents, conflicts, and coexistence to create. Here's the part that breaks everyone's brain. Malaysia is the only country on earth where the ethnic majority receives affirmative action, yet the economy hasn't collapsed. Let that sink in. Malays make up about 70% of the population. They get preferential treatment in university admissions, government contracts, housing discounts, and corporate equity requirements. The minorities, Chinese and Indian Malaysians, get the short end of the stick. Every economics textbook says this should destroy the economy. Every political science theory predicts ethnic violence and capital flight. Harvard Kennedy School published a research paper in 2016 titled Affirmative Action Paradoxes. They analyzed 47 countries with ethnic preference policies. Malaysia was the only case where majority preference policies didn't trigger economic decline or widespread ethnic violence. The only one. Back to Sarah Chen. Her company in Kuala Lumpur is required by law to maintain 60% Bumiputera employees. That's the constitutional term for ethnic Malays and indigenous people. In any other country, she told me over coffee, this kind of quota system would absolutely destroy competitiveness. You'd get resentment, inefficiency, brain drain. But here's what shattered her assumptions. Her Malaysian branch outperforms their Singapore office by 23% in productivity. 23%. She described walking through her KL office at lunchtime. You hear Malay, Mandarin, Tamil, and English in the same conversation. You see halal food next to vegetarian curries next to Chinese New Year snacks on the same table. Her Malay colleague teaches her Chinese colleague how to make rendang. Her Indian colleague brings everyone to his daughter's Bharatanatyam recital. This isn't diversity training. This isn't a corporate poster about inclusion. This is enforced coexistence that created accidental innovation. But here's the part that makes your stomach turn. Every political scientist in the 1970s predicted Malaysia would implode like Yugoslavia. Ethnic cleansing. Partition. Economic collapse. The whole nightmare. It hasn't happened. Why? Meet Ahmad Rahman. He's 52, a Malay businessman who runs a construction company in Selangor. His company gets government contracts under Bumiputera policy. He's honest about that. But his business partner? Chinese Malaysian. Handles all the private sector negotiations, supplier relationships, and international deals. I asked him the uncomfortable question, isn't this system unfair? He paused, looked at me, and said something I'll never forget. If this policy didn't exist, we'd have race riots. It's a bribe for social peace. And everyone knows it. A bribe for social peace. The University of Malaya published a longitudinal study in 2019 that tracked 2,000 families across all ethnic groups for 15 years. The finding: 67% agreed the system prevents violence, including a significant portion of Chinese and Indian Malaysians who are disadvantaged by it. Ahmad's father survived the May 13, 1969 race riots. He described it in a way that made my skin crawl. The streets smelled like burning rubber and fear for weeks. Bodies in the streets. Neighbors who'd shared meals killing each other. Malaysia's current homicide rate? 2.1 per 100,000 people. Sri Lanka, with a similar ethnic split? 6.7 per 100,000. Myanmar? 15.2 per 100,000. The system works. But at what hidden cost? If you're a Chinese or Indian Malaysian, you pay an invisible tax your whole life. Meet Dr. Priya Subramaniam. She's 29, a Malaysian Indian doctor working at a hospital in Kuala Lumpur. She scored straight 9 A's in her SPM exams. That's the Malaysian equivalent of perfect scores. Top of her class. Stellar recommendations. Rejected from every public medical school in Malaysia. She had to study medicine in India. It cost her family an extra $80,000. 4 years away from home. The shame of explaining to relatives why she wasn't good enough for Malaysian universities, even though everyone knew the real reason. Now she's back in Kuala Lumpur, working 14-hour shifts, saving Bumiputera and non-Bumiputera patients equally. I asked her the question I was almost afraid to ask, "Are you bitter?" She smiled. Tired eyes, but genuine smile. My Indian grandfather arrived in Malaysia with nothing. Worked on rubber plantations. Couldn't read or write. Now I'm a doctor. The tax bought me peace to build that. In Pakistan, in Myanmar, in Sri Lanka, people like us became refugees or corpses. Here, I'm alive. I'm thriving. That's worth something. This is the part that breaks the simple narratives. The IMF published a report in 2020 on Malaysia's brain drain. About 15% of non-Bumiputera professionals emigrate, mostly to Singapore, Australia, and the UK. That sounds bad. But Singapore, with no affirmative action and pure meritocracy? 20% emigration rate. The grass isn't greener. It's just different shades of complicated. Priya showed me photos on her phone from her kampung, her neighborhood. Wooden Malay houses next to gated Chinese condos. A mosque within 200 meters of a Chinese temple and a Hindu shrine. Halal mamak stalls next to pork noodle shops. This, she said, you can't find anywhere else. But this fragile balance? It's cracking. Everything I've described, this impossible system that somehow works, it's dying. Fast. A 2022 study by the Merdeka Center found that 68% of Malaysian youth want the affirmative action system either reformed or completely abolished. That includes 42% of Bumiputera youth. The generation that remembers why this system exists? They're aging out. Dying. The young people see the inefficiency. The unfairness. They read about meritocracy online. They see Singapore's wealth and ask, why not us? Wei Zhang, that Chinese economist I mentioned earlier, spent his final year in Malaysia trying to understand what makes the system work. His conclusion shattered conventional wisdom. The system only works because of organic ethnic integration. Mixed neighborhoods. Interethnic businesses. Mamak stalls at 2 a.m. where Malay, Chinese, and Indian guys argue about football while eating roti canai. Random acts of cultural exchange that feel like accidents but are actually the whole foundation. But now, gated communities segregating by class, which increasingly means race. Online echo chambers. Political polarization. The glue that held this together is dissolving in real time. And here's the terrifying part. There's no replacement solution. Norway tried to implement their integration model in a Malaysian pilot program. Failed completely. The Canadian points-based immigration system can't account for 800 years of coexistence culture. Wei described visiting a Chinese New Year open house in Penang, something uniquely Malaysian where families open their homes to everyone during festivals. Indian families, Malay families, Chinese families sharing pineapple tarts and beef rendang and muruku. He stood there watching, recording notes, and realized, this exact thing, you cannot policy into existence. You cannot engineer it. It either grows over centuries, or it doesn't exist. So what happens when the generation that remembers why this matters dies? What happens when the kids who grew up in segregated gated communities become leaders? Here's the truth no one wants to hear. Malaysia's system works because of historical accident, not brilliant design. Oxford University published research in 2017 called Accidental Nations that examined Malaysia extensively. Yale's ethnic conflict database spanning 200 countries. Singapore's own abandoned Malaysian Malaysia policy that Lee Kuan Yew tried before giving up and leaving the Federation. They all point to the same conclusion. Malaysia's model cannot be replicated because it requires 3 impossible conditions. First, time. You need roughly 800 years of trade-based coexistence. The Malacca Sultanate era created interdependence between Malay, Chinese, Indian, and Arab traders. That's not something you can fast-forward through government programs. Second, geography. Peninsular Malaysia's dense jungles and challenging terrain prevented the kind of ethnic cleansing that happens in open plains. Rwanda. Flat terrain, easy genocide. Bosnia. Accessible valleys, ethnic cleansing. Malaysia. The jungle itself enforced coexistence because moving populations was too difficult. Third, colonial accident. The British brought Chinese and Indian labor but, and this is critical, they kept the Malay sultanates intact. Created a system of interdependence rather than hierarchy. Every other colonial power created clear hierarchies. The British accidentally created a 3-way standoff where no group could dominate completely. Replicating these 3 conditions politically? Impossible. Bosnia tried power-sharing agreements after the war. Failed. Constant political paralysis. Lebanon's confessional system that guarantees representation for Christians, Sunnis, and Shias? Collapsed spectacularly. Government can't function. Iraq's ethnic and sectarian quotas? Disaster. Corruption, violence, dysfunction. Malaysia. Somehow still standing. GDP growing. Tourists arriving. People living their lives. It's not perfect. It's not fair. But it hasn't exploded. So here's what I need you to tell me in the comments, and I'm genuinely asking. If you could redesign Malaysia's system from scratch today, with all the data, all the theories, all the best intentions, would you dare to? Knowing that every improvement could shatter 60 years of accidental peace? Malaysian viewers, does this match your lived experience, or am I missing something critical? Because I'm an outsider looking in, and I know there are layers I can't see. Non-Malaysians, could your country survive this system? Or would it implode in 6 months? Because Malaysia is running out of time to decide, evolve the system, or watch it crumble under its own contradictions. And the world is watching to see if the impossible model can survive modernity, or if it was always just a beautiful accident waiting to end.